So frankly, not as much of this is happening as many of us had hoped, but that's also pretty predictable. Redeveloping office spaces and retail into housing seems like an obvious win-win when you look at it from afar. Retail and office has become increasingly underutilized as people are working from home more, they're shopping online more, and at the same time, we've seen, major housing shortages throughout many major U.S. markets. So it seems like a pretty clear solution to go in and take those spaces that are underutilized and turn them into housing. But it's just not that simple. We're seeing this a lot in the headlines because it seems like an obvious solution and kind of low-hanging fruits for politicians to tout, right? You're taking an underutilized asset, creating something that people need, but it's more complex than that. Retail and office space is purpose built, and turning it into housing is complex, it's costly, and sometimes it's really not feasible. Often you can end up with a product that has a lot of compromises when you compare it to something that was purpose built at housing from the ground up. There's definitely some great examples that have been done and have seen some success, but they're kind of few and far between. Often they share one of a few traits. It's often a historic building that has either a landmark status, needs to be preserved, or people want to preserve it, and it can garner premium rents or prices once it's been turned into housing. A lot of times this is supported by some government initiatives, tax credits, something that makes the development and the redevelopment, more feasible for somebody. Or it's just a great location with a lot of infrastructure that surrounds it and just a big need for housing that makes the process and the complexity of it. One great example is Bishop Place in downtown Honolulu. This is a 1992 office building that was converted into 493 apartments. Starting in about 2022, they've just recently wrapped up as it's been kind of a floor by floor process. There's still some office tenants there, and almost half the units are designated as affordable. So it really essentially becomes a mixed use project once it's done. The Millennium on LaSalle in downtown Chicago is another example. It's an older building, 1903 construction, 14-story building in the heart of Chicago's financial district. This was turned into 213 apartments back in 2021. Both Millennium and Bishop Place are 95% occupied or more last time we checked. It's important to see office to residential conversions as just one part of the solution to the housing crisis. I really expect this to continue kind of at a level that's similar to what we've seen. So steady, but relatively low volume overall. I think there's a bigger opportunity for retail sites, which typically have a larger footprint and more significant infrastructure surrounding them to generate new housing and be a better opportunity for developers to come in and actually see more feasible projects that could actually turn into reality. One good example of this is Main Place Mall. This is in Santa Ana, so Southern California. It's an 80s vintage mall that had over 1 million square feet of retail before a $500 million redevelopment project started back in 2022. The first phase of apartments, and there could be up to 1,000 there, first phase started delivering late last year. So although it's been slow going for office to residential conversion and it hasn't really hit the heights that I think some people had expected, that's kind of what we think is going to continue to happen. There's more opportunity for retail sites to generate more significant volume that could have a greater impact in local communities.